Okay, so I just paralleled being kicked out of the garden and the law. But in the Christian walk, and this is what Paul was talking about, whenever you walk by your own flesh, you're eating of the flesh of the fruit of the law. Why? Because you're trying to get to heaven by your own flesh and not by the blood. You're eating of the wrong tree. You're eating of the tree of the knowledge of your sin, trying to correct yourself and make yourself righteous before God, but you can't be because you're flesh. So you're walking by the flesh. This is what walking by the flesh means. Walking by the law of the fruit. So when you're walking by the flesh, you're walking by the Antichrist. When you're walking under the tree of life, you're walking under grace, under the blood. Now to this day, the Jews don't understand, because there's no more sacrifices. There's no more blood that they're under, so they're under what's called mitzvah. So in other words, your own good works, your flesh, can buy you righteousness. And indeed, this is what it's all about, scales. But you see, Christ broke the scales. The flesh no longer counts for anything. This is what Paul was speaking about. But that the tree of life is what, in Jesus Christ, grace, blood, the Passover lamb, Pesach lamb, grace. Okay, that's what saves. And that's the difference between walking with Christ and Antichrist. And the Jews for Jesus for today are walking back under the law. Every time they try to say that there's a law, or that although Christ came, we're still going to be judged, and we have to be righteous. Now that doesn't mean that we're not righteous. As a matter of fact, by walking not under the law, we become more righteous, because the law is what makes us sin. And this is what Paul was saying. And this is what the Pharisees at the time, the Jerusalem Jews, weren't getting under James. And this is why Peter fell into that trap, because of these Jews. In chapter 15, verse 5 of Acts, said they were believers, but they said, unless you're circumcised and follow the law of Moses, you can't be saved. In other words, they threw away salvation, okay, for Moses, when Moses told them that to listen to the prophet to come, which is interpreted differently by Rashi, okay? The prophet to come was the one that was going to show you the tree of life, to eat of that tree. But they said, unless you go back to the law and legalism, now you're back to Moses. And this is, by the way, when Jesus Christ died on the cross, 70 years later, after the Jews had been witnessed to, they could not get their eyes off of Moses. Their eyes were on the wrong fruit the whole time. They didn't realize that Messiah was the opposite fruit, the fruit of grace. And then, this is why they have, I forget the name of the guy they try to hail as Messiah. And when they tried to do that, the temple fell. I forget and you can know the holiday where you have to shave and you have to fast because the temple fell. And they've been looking for their Messiah ever since. They've been looking to the wrong Messiah, and this is what that had to do with. And the reason why that had to happen was because the door had to be open to us Gentiles until you Jews saw. Okay? So you can't sacrifice anymore, so you have to do mitzvah, which is the total opposite of trusting in the tree of life, but trusting in your own flesh. See, and this is why the door was closed. Your eyes were blinded, because your eyes only see Moses. See, this is what the essence of Christianity was. And even the Jewish Christians at the time, there was a sect called the Ebionites, even the writers of who had the scriptures of our own Bible in the early church, couldn't see the difference between eating of the fruit of grace and eating of the fruit of the law. This is the problem that Paul had with them, frankly. And this is why the sacrifices ended. God closed the door and kicked you out of the garden, opened up the doors and said that you can't get to heaven, okay? No longer can you even sacrifice. He wasn't pleased with those sacrifices anymore, that the sacrifice had come, and this is the way to go. And that door had to be shut. But you see, you still have to try to open it again. And that's why they were blinded and Jerusalem fell. But that doesn't mean, by the way, that your eyes aren't going to be open, because Paul said that the eyes of the Jews would be open and the eyes for the Gentiles would be closed. And indeed it is happening. Most Christians today will bring you back to the law. They're eating, as soon as you start eating the fruit of the flesh, you have separated yourself from Christ. This is what Christianity is doing today. The door will be open to the Jews. But the Christians should be saying, oh no, stay blind, don't worry. You know what? If you're Jewish, stay Jewish. You know why? Because you'll shut the door to us Gentiles. And Paul said it was to provoke you to jealousy, to see us, who were also chosen under Abraham by the promise, okay, walking into the kingdom of heaven while the devout Jew who's eating of the law is going, oh, we're going there. But when they see grace happen to the Gentiles, jealousy has to provoke, hopefully, and you will see that, well, first of all, we're all brothers and sisters. You think you're chosen, okay, but you're not chosen unless you know Messiah. Not all Israel is Israel. This is what Paul said, okay? But if God has chosen you to be a part of the kingdom, then you're my brother, Jew. I am part of Abraham's seed. This is what this whole thing was about. God bless.